Simone Carter sat in the stiff leather chair, her fingers gripping the armrests so tightly her knuckles had turned pale. The black dress she wore still smelled faintly of the funeral home from 3 days ago. Across the mahogany conference table, her mother-in-law Patricia Hastings sat with perfect posture, a slight smile playing at the corners of her thin lips. Howard Hastings, Graham's father, kept checking his expensive watch as if he had somewhere more important to be. And there, in the corner of the room, sat Bethany Cook, a woman Simone had never met before today, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that never seemed to actually touch her face. Mr. Bradford, the lawyer, cleared his throat for the third time. He was a small man with gray hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose. He looked uncomfortable, shifting papers around on his desk as if hoping they might rearrange themselves into something less ugly. As I was saying, Mr. Bradford continued, his voice thin and reedy, Graham Hastings made significant changes to his will approximately 3 months before his passing. The 4-bedroom mansion located at 1247 Maple Ridge Drive, which Mr. and Mrs. Hastings Sr. helped purchase as a wedding gift 10 years ago, will revert to Howard and Patricia Hastings, as is their legal right as co-owners of the property. Simone felt the room tilt. She had lived in that house for 10 years. She had painted every room. She had planted the roses in the front yard. She had hosted Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas mornings in that house. Wait, Simone heard herself say, though her voice sounded far away. What do you mean, revert? Patricia's smile grew wider. Darling, surely Graham told you. We own 60% of that house. We made the down payment. We paid for the renovations when the pipes burst that winter. Did you think it was all yours? Mr. Bradford pushed his glasses up his nose. Mrs. Hastings, please. Let me finish. He turned to Simone, and there was something like pity in his eyes. Mrs. Carter, you will retain the cottage property at 89 Willow Creek Road. This was a property that came to Graham through his grandfather's estate. It's been vacant for several years. The property is solely in Graham's name, so it passes to you as his widow. A cottage? Simone's voice cracked. That old falling down place on the edge of town? The one with the broken windows? The very same, Patricia said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Though I suppose we should be grateful Graham left you anything at all. Given the circumstances. What circumstances? Simone demanded, but she already felt dread pooling in her stomach. Bethany let out a theatrical sob from her corner. All eyes turned to her. She was younger than Simone, maybe 25, with blonde hair and the kind of figure that made men turn their heads. She pressed the tissue to her mouth and whispered, I'm sorry. This is just so hard. Who is this woman? Simone asked, looking from the lawyer to her in-laws and back again. The room went silent. Mr. Bradford shuffled his papers. Howard examined his watch again. Patricia's smile turned into something sharp and cruel. You really didn't know? Patricia asked. Oh, this is too perfect. Simone, meet Bethany Cook. She and Graham had been seeing each other for the past 2 years. The world stopped spinning. Simone couldn't breathe. 2 years. She thought back over the past 2 years. The late nights Graham claimed to be working, the business trips, the new cologne, the way he'd stopped touching her, stopped talking to her, stopped seeing her. She's carrying Graham's child, Patricia continued, clearly enjoying every second of this. 4 months along. Graham was planning to leave you, actually. He was going to file for divorce after the new year. But then his heart gave out before he could. Such a tragedy. Simone looked at Bethany, who was cradling her stomach with one hand. She looked back at Mr. Bradford. Is this true? The lawyer nodded miserably. I'm afraid Mr. Hastings did mention his intentions to divorce in our last meeting. That's when he changed the will. He wanted to make sure his parents and Miss Cook were taken care of. He cleared his throat again. You have 2 weeks to vacate the premises at Maple Ridge Drive. Here are the keys to the cottage property. He slid a single rusty key across the desk. Simone stared at the key. 2 weeks. 10 years of marriage, and she had 2 weeks to pack up her life and move into a shack that nobody wanted. Patricia stood up, smoothing down her expensive skirt. Well, this has been enlightening. Simone, dear, please make sure you're out on time. Howard and I are having the mansion appraised, and we'd like to put it on the market as soon as possible. We need to downsize now that Graham is gone. His life insurance will help, of course, but we did invest so much in that house. Life insurance? Simone asked numbly. Oh yes, Patricia said breezily. Graham had a very generous policy. $200,000. Bethany is the beneficiary, naturally. For the baby. She smiled at Bethany, who smiled back weakly. Simone stood on shaking legs. I need to go. Of course you do, Patricia said. So much packing to do. And that cottage will need a lot of work. I drove past it last week. The roof looks like it might collapse any day now. I do hope you have savings. Simone walked out of that office without looking back. She made it to her car. Graham's car actually, but he'd given her the keys 2 years ago, before the tears came. She sat in the parking lot and sobbed until her throat was raw. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Don't forget to return the house keys when you leave. And please take all your things. We don't want any of your clutter. Simone threw her phone into the passenger seat and started the car. She had 2 weeks to figure out the rest of her life. 2 weeks to find somewhere to live. 2 weeks to accept that the man she'd loved had stopped loving her years ago and she'd been too blind to see it. But as she drove away from that lawyer's office, something small and hard began to form in her chest. It wasn't quite anger yet. It wasn't quite determination. But it was the seed of something that would grow. She wasn't going to break. She wasn't going to beg. And she sure as hell wasn't going to let Patricia Hastings see her cry ever again. The mansion that was no longer hers looked different now. Simone stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, seeing it through new eyes. The California king bed where she'd slept alone so many nights. The dresser where Graham kept his clothes. The bathroom where he'd started locking the door when he showered. She'd come back to start packing, but Patricia had beaten her to it. Her mother-in-law was sitting on the edge of the bed, going through Simone's jewelry box. What are you doing? Simone asked, her voice flat. Patricia didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. Just making sure nothing of Graham's family gets mixed in with your things. This pearl necklace, for example. Howard's mother gave this to Graham to give to his wife. It should stay with the family. I am his wife. Patricia corrected. And technically, since he was planning to divorce you, I think these should go to Bethany. She's carrying the family heir after all. Simone walked over and took the jewelry box from Patricia's hands. Get out. Excuse me? Get out of this house. I have 2 weeks and I'm not spending them with you watching me like a hawk. Get out now or I'm calling the police. Patricia stood up, her face red with anger. You ungrateful little. Out. Patricia left, but not before turning back at the door. You know, Graham told me once that marrying you was the biggest mistake of his life. He said you were boring. Cool. He said Bethany made him feel alive again. I just thought you should know that. After she left, Simone sat on the bed and let the words wash over her. They hurt, but they also felt like confirmation of what she'd suspected for years. She and Graham had stopped being happy long before Bethany came into the picture. But she'd stayed. She tried. She'd loved him even when he'd stopped loving her back. Her phone rang. It was Tanya Rodriguez, her best friend since college. I'm outside, Tanya said without preamble. Let me in before I break down this door. Simone buzzed her in, and within minutes Tanya was wrapping her in a hug that smelled like coconut oil and cinnamon. I heard about the will, Tanya said. Girl, I am so sorry. That family is evil. He was cheating on me for 2 years, Simone said into Tanya's shoulder. With some blonde girl who's pregnant. And his parents knew. They all knew and nobody told me. Because they're trash, Tanya said fiercely. All of them. Including Graham. God rest his soul, but he was trash for what he did to you. They spent the next 3 hours going through the house. In Graham's office, Simone found the evidence she'd been too afraid to look for before. Emails. Hundreds of them. My love, Graham had written to Bethany. I can't wait to start our real life together. Just a few more months and I'll be free. Receipts for jewelry Simone had never received. Hotel rooms she'd never slept in. Restaurants she'd never eaten at. Photos. Graham and Bethany at the beach. Graham and Bethany at a cabin in the mountains. Graham and Bethany looking at each other the way he used to look at Simone back when they first met. The last email was dated 3 days before Graham's heart attack. I'm telling her this weekend, he'd written. I'm done living a lie. I love you and our baby more than anything. But he hadn't told her. He'd died instead, leaving her with nothing but a run-down cottage and the knowledge that her entire marriage had been a lie. Do you want to keep any of this? Tanya asked gently, gesturing to the computer screen. No, Simone said. I don't need evidence. I know the truth now. They packed Simone's belongings in silence. Clothes, books. A few photos from before Graham had stopped smiling in pictures with her. Kitchen supplies she'd bought with her own money. Her grandmother's quilt. Not much, really, for 10 years of life. Patricia came back the next day with Howard. They walked through the house like they owned it, which legally they did. They pointed out things they wanted to keep. Things they wanted to sell. They talked about Simone like she wasn't even there. She never did take care of this place properly, Patricia said, running her finger along a windowsill. Look at this dust. Simone bit her tongue. She cleaned this house every weekend while Graham was off with his mistress. The cottage she's getting is a dump, Howard said. I told Graham he should just sell it, but he kept it for sentimental reasons. His grandfather proposed to his grandmother on that property, you know. Well, it's all she's getting, Patricia said. And frankly, it's more than she deserves. On the last day, Simone loaded the final box into the back of her car. She stood in the empty house one more time, looking at the rooms where she'd been happy once before everything fell apart. She left the keys on the kitchen counter and walked out without looking back. In her rearview mirror, she saw Patricia and Howard walking up to the house, smiling and laughing like they'd won some kind of prize. Maybe they had. But as Simone drove toward her new life in a cottage she'd never seen, she made herself a promise. She would survive this. She would build something new. And she would never, ever let the Hastings family see her broken again. The cottage looked worse in person than it had in her memories. Simone had only seen it once before years ago when Graham's grandfather passed away. She remembered thinking it looked like something from a fairy tale with its stone walls and arched doorway. But that was before time and neglect had taken their toll. Now the stones were crumbling in places. The roof sagged in the middle. 3 of the windows were broken, covered with plywood that was itself rotting away. The yard was overgrown with weeds as tall as her waist. The front door hung crooked on its hinges. Oh, honey, Tanya said from the passenger seat. Tell me this isn't it. This is it, Simone said quietly. Home sweet home. They sat in the car for a long moment just staring. A crow landed on the sagging roof and caught at them before flying away. Well, Tanya said finally. It's got character. Despite everything, Simone laughed. It's got something all right. The key stuck in the lock. Simone had to wiggle it back and forth for a full minute before the door finally swung open with a sound like a dying animal. Inside was worse than outside. The main room was small, maybe 15 feet by 15 feet. There was a fireplace that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. The floor was covered in a layer of dust so thick Simone could write her name in it. Water stains bloomed across the ceiling like ugly flowers. In the corner, something small and furry scurried away. Please tell me that wasn't a rat, Tanya said. Probably just a mouse. Oh well, if it's just a mouse, that's so much better. There were 2 other rooms, a tiny bedroom with a closet that smelled like mold, and a bathroom that made Simone want to cry. The sink was stained rust red. The toilet was missing its seat. The shower was just a pipe sticking out of the wall over a drain in the floor. The kitchen was part of the main room, just a counter with a hot plate and a sink that groaned when Simone tried to turn on the water. Brown liquid came out for a few seconds before it finally ran clear. I can't live here, Simone whispered. I can't. Tanya put her arm around her shoulders. Yes, you can. We'll make it work. We'll clean it up. We'll fix what we can. You're stronger than you think. They brought in Simone's things. Most of them stayed in boxes because there was nowhere to put them. Tanya had brought an air mattress and a pump. They set it up in the bedroom after sweeping out the worst of the dirt. Tanya's husband brought over a space heater because the nights were getting cold and there was no central heating. He also brought cleaning supplies, a tool kit, and a look of concern that he tried to hide. It's going to be okay, he told Simone. My cousin Jerome does construction. I'll give you his number. He owes me a favor. After they left, Simone sat on the air mattress in the dark. The space heater glowed orange in the corner. Through the broken windows, she could hear traffic from the main road a quarter mile away. An owl hooted somewhere in the overgrown yard. Her phone buzzed. Social media notifications. She opened the app even though she knew it was a mistake. Bethany had posted a photo of her baby bump with the caption, "Every ending is a new beginning. Some people get what they deserve and others get what they've earned. Grateful for karma. Hashtag blessed, hashtag new chapter, hashtag truth wins." The comments were filled with people Simone didn't know, congratulating Bethany, telling her she deserved happiness. One comment stood out, "So glad you're finally getting your happy ending. That other woman never appreciated him anyway." Simone deleted the app from her phone. She didn't need to see that. She lay down on the air mattress and stared at the water-stained ceiling. This was her life now. A cottage that was falling apart. No money. No husband. No home. Nothing. She cried herself to sleep, and in her dreams she was back in the mansion. But every door she opened led to another room full of Graham and Bethany laughing at her. When she woke up, her back ached from the air mattress and her eyes were swollen from crying. Pale morning light came through the broken windows. Everything hurt. But she got up anyway. She washed her face in the rusty sink. She got dressed in jeans and an old shirt. She made instant coffee using the hot plate and water from the groaning pipes. And then she looked around the cottage again. Really looked at it. It was a disaster. But it was her disaster. The Hastings didn't want it. Nobody wanted it. Which meant she could do whatever she wanted with it. Okay, she said out loud to the empty room. Let's start over. She opened all the windows that still opened to air out the mustiness. She swept the floors until dust clouds made her cough. She scrubbed the bathroom sink until her hands were raw. She pulled weeds in the front yard until her back screamed. It wasn't much. It was barely anything. But it was a start. Tanya came back that evening with pizza and found Simone covered in dirt but smiling for the first time in weeks. Look at you, Tanya said. I was worried I'd find you crying in a corner. I did that last night, Simone said. Today I'm doing something about it. They sat on the front step, the one that didn't wobble too badly, and ate pizza while the sun set. A car drove by slowly, and Simone recognized Patricia's expensive sedan. She could see her former mother-in-law's face pressed against the window, staring at the cottage with satisfaction, probably telling Howard about the hovel Simone had been reduced to. Simone waved and smiled even though it hurt her face to do it. What are you doing? Tanya asked. Not letting her win, Simone said. She thinks I'm defeated. She thinks I'm going to curl up and die in this wreck of a house. But I'm not. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to make this place livable. And I'm going to be okay. That's my girl, Tanya said, raising her pizza slice in a toast. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, Simone echoed. She didn't believe it yet. But maybe if she said it enough times she would. The bedroom floor creaked every time Simone walked across it. At first she thought it was just another sign of the cottage's age. But on the fifth night of sleeping on the air mattress she rolled over and heard a different sound, not just a creak but almost a hollow knocking. She couldn't sleep after that. The sound bothered her like a stone in her shoe. At 2 a.m, she finally turned on the lamp and got down on her hands and knees to examine the floor. Most of the boards were solid, nailed down firmly. But near the wall, under where the foot of her air mattress sat, one board moved when she pressed on it. Not much, just a slight give but enough to notice. She pressed harder. The board lifted on one end just a fraction of an inch. Simone looked around for something to pry with and found a butter knife in one of her still-packed boxes. She slid it under the board's edge and levered it up. The nails were old and rusted and they came free with a sound like a sigh. Under the board was darkness and the smell of old wood. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. In the space between the floor joists, covered in decades of dust, sat a metal box. Her hands shook as she reached down and lifted it out. It was heavy, about the size of a shoebox, with a simple latch that wasn't locked. The metal was cool against her palms. She sat on the floor and stared at it for a full minute before she opened it. Inside were bundles of cash wrapped in plastic bags. Old $20 and $50 bills, some of them with dates from the 70s and 80s. She counted 5 bundles before her hands started shaking too much to continue. Under the cash were papers, stock certificates with names of companies she'd never heard of. Some of them looked ancient. Others were more recent, maybe from the 90s. There was also a velvet pouch. She opened it carefully and gasped. Gold coins spilled into her lap. Real gold, heavy and gleaming even in the dim light. And jewelry, rings, necklaces, bracelets, all of it looking expensive even to her untrained eye. At the very bottom was an envelope. On the front, in shaky handwriting, it said, "For whoever finds this." Simone's hands were steady enough now to open the envelope. Inside was a letter written on yellowed paper. "My name is Ruth Cooper," the letter began. "If you're reading this, I'm long gone, and this cottage has passed to someone who needs it. I'm glad it's you. I bought this cottage in 1952 with money I saved from my job at the telephone company. My family never knew how much I made. I let them think I was just a secretary, but I was actually managing accounts for some of the company's biggest clients. I invested wisely. I saved every penny I could. My husband died young. My children moved away. My family forgot about me except when they wanted something. They don't know about this money because I never told them. I lived simply in this cottage and I saved everything. The cash is just savings. The stocks are from companies I believed in. Some might be worthless now, but some might be worth more than I could have imagined. The gold and jewelry were things I bought for myself over the years, small pleasures I never wore because nobody was around to see them. I'm leaving this cottage to my grandson Philip, though he'll probably never use it. He has a big house in the city and thinks this place is beneath him. But someday this cottage will belong to someone who actually needs it. Someone who's lost everything and has nowhere else to go. Someone who deserves a second chance. If that's you, then this money is yours. Use it to start over. Build a better life. And please, if you ever think of me, know that I'm happy it went to someone who needed it. Don't let the people who hurt you see you fail. Live well. That's the best revenge there is. The letter wasn't signed, just RC, at the bottom with a date, December 1999. Simone read the letter 3 times. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from shock. It was from something that felt almost like hope. She counted the money carefully. 12 bundles, 50 bills in each bundle. Mostly 50s and 20s. $60,000 in cash, give or take. The gold coins filled a cereal bowl she dug out of a box. She counted 43 of them. She had no idea what they were worth, but gold was gold. The jewelry sparkled in the lamplight. Diamond rings, pearl necklaces, emerald bracelets. She didn't know much about jewelry, but even she could tell these were real. And the stock certificates. She counted 18 of them, for companies with names like International Business Machines, and General Electric, and Coca-Cola. Some were for 20 shares, some for 50, one for 100. She sat on the floor surrounded by the contents of the box until the sun came up. Her mind was racing. This was real money. This could change everything. But she needed to be smart about it. She couldn't just start spending suddenly or people would ask questions. The Hastings would want to know where she got money. They might try to claim the cottage had hidden assets that should have been part of Graham's estate. She needed a plan. She needed help. She needed someone she could trust absolutely. At 7 in the morning, she called Tanya. This better be important, Tanya groaned. It's Saturday. Come over, Simone said. Right now. And Tanya? Don't tell anyone you're coming here. You're scaring me. Just come. Please. Tanya arrived 45 minutes later in sweatpants and a hoodie, looking concerned. What's going on? Did something happen? Simone locked the door behind her and led her to the bedroom. The metal box sat on the floor, still open, its contents spread out like treasure from a pirate's chest. Oh my God, Tanya whispered. Where did you get this? It was under the floorboards, Simone said. There's a letter. Read it. Tanya read the letter twice, then looked at Simone with wide eyes. This is real? This is really real. Every bit of it. How much do you think it's worth? I don't know, Simone admitted. But enough to change my life. Enough to start over. Enough to never have to go back to the Hastings begging for help. Tanya sat down hard on the air mattress. What are you going to do? I'm going to be smart, Simone said. I'm going to be careful. And I'm going to use this money to build something they never thought I could build. She looked at the letter again, at Ruth Cooper's shaky handwriting and her final words. Live well. That's the best revenge there is. I'm going to live well, Simone said quietly. Better than they ever imagined. And I'm going to enjoy every second of it. They spent the entire weekend researching in the cottage, the door locked and the curtains drawn. Tanya brought her laptop and Simone used her phone. They looked up every stock certificate, every company, every piece of information they could find. Some of the stocks were for companies that no longer existed. But others were different. Simone, Tanya said, her voice tight. This IBM certificate for 100 shares from 1975. Do you know what that's worth now? Tell me. It's split multiple times since then. That 100 shares is now? Hold on, let me calculate. Tanya's fingers flew over the keyboard. That's now 800 shares after all the splits. IBM is trading at about $130 a share right now. That's over $100,000. For just one certificate. Simone felt dizzy. Are you sure? I'm looking right at it. And this Coca-Cola one? 50 shares from 1987? With all the splits and dividends, that's worth another $70,000 minimum. They went through each certificate carefully. Some were worthless. But seven of them were for companies that had grown and split and grown again over the decades. By the time they finished calculating, Simone was looking at close to $500,000 in stock value. Add that to the $60,000 in cash, and the gold coins that an online calculator estimated at over $2,000 each, and the jewelry that might be worth another $100,000, and suddenly Simone was looking at a fortune that totaled well over $2 million. I can't believe this, Simone whispered. This is real money. Life-changing money. What are you going to do with it? Tanya asked. First, I need to cash it in. Quietly. Without anyone knowing. How? I'll go to banks in different towns. I'll set up new accounts. I'll say. Simone thought hard. I'll say I inherited it from a great aunt I never knew. People inherit money all the time, right? But what about taxes? The IRS. I'll hire an accountant. A good one. I'll pay whatever taxes I owe. I want to do this right. Legally. I don't want any problems later. They made a list. First priority, sell the stocks through a broker. Second priority, have the jewelry appraised and sell it privately. Third priority, deposit the cash slowly in different banks in amounts that wouldn't raise red flags. Fourth priority, find a financial advisor who could help her invest the money wisely. This is going to take time, Tanya said. Maybe months before you have access to all of it. That's okay, Simone said. I can wait. I've waited this long. On Monday, Simone drove 2 towns over and found a brokerage office. She wore her best dress and brought all the stock certificates in a folder. The broker was a middle-aged man named Mr. Patterson who looked bored until Simone spread the certificates on his desk. Then his eyebrows went up. These are quite old, he said. Where did you get them? They belong to my great-aunt, Simone said smoothly. She'd practiced this lie until it sounded natural. She passed away recently and left me her cottage. These were in a trunk in the attic. I had no idea they existed until I was cleaning. Your great-aunt had excellent taste in companies, Mr. Patterson said. Several of these are worth substantial amounts. I'll need to verify them, of course. Check that they're legitimate and haven't been reported stolen. That will take a few weeks. That's fine, Simone said. I'm in no rush. They shook on it. Simone paid him $5,000 in cash as a deposit. She'd withdrawn it from one of her new accounts the day before. Cash was better, no paper trail for curious in-laws to follow. Jerome and his crew arrived early Monday morning with trucks full of supplies. The sound of hammering and sawing filled the air. Simone had taken a week off from her job at the library, a part-time position she'd gotten a month ago to keep up appearances, to supervise. The roof came off first. Watching the old shingles being torn away felt like shedding old skin. The crew found rot underneath, but nothing that couldn't be fixed. New wood went up. New shingles, dark gray this time instead of the faded red that had been there before. Windows came out and new ones went in. Double-paned, energy efficient. The cottage suddenly looked awake, like it had opened its eyes after a long sleep. The plumbing got fixed. The bathroom got gutted completely, new shower, new toilet, new sink. Jerome installed a vanity with a marble top that Simone found on clearance. The bathroom went from nightmare to dream. The kitchen got the same treatment. New cabinets in a soft cream color. New countertops. A real stove and oven to replace the hot plate. A dishwasher that Simone never thought she'd have. It was small, but it was hers. Neighbors started stopping by to watch the work. An old woman from down the road brought lemonade. A young couple walking their dog asked what was being done. Everyone was friendly, curious about who was fixing up the old Cooper place. Patricia drove by 3 times in the first week. Each time she slowed down to stare. On the third time she actually stopped and got out of her car. My, she said looking at the new roof. Quite the renovation you're doing. I didn't realize you had money for this sort of thing. Just a small insurance policy, Simone said pleasantly. Graham had one through his work that listed me as beneficiary. It wasn't much, but enough to make this place livable. Patricia's eyes narrowed. I see. Well, don't spend it all in one place. You'll need money for property taxes and utilities. I'll manage, Simone said. I always do. After Patricia left, Jerome came over. That woman doesn't like you much, does she? That's my former mother-in-law. And no, she doesn't. Well, she's about to like you even less when she sees what we're doing inside. He was right. By the end of week 3, the cottage was transformed. Hardwood floors throughout, refinished to a honey-colored shine. Fresh paint on every wall, soft colors that made the space feel bigger. New fixtures in the bathroom and kitchen that gleamed. New light fixtures that actually worked. Jerome's crew built a small deck out back overlooking what would eventually be a garden. They fixed the front step and added a little porch with room for a chair. They power washed the stone exterior until it looked almost new. Simone bought furniture from estate sales and thrift stores. A comfortable couch in navy blue. A real bed with a proper mattress. A small dining table with 2 chairs. Bookshelves for all the books she'd been keeping in boxes. Curtains that matched. Rugs that tied everything together. It wasn't fancy. But it was clean and comfortable and completely hers. The total cost came to $48,000 once everything was done. Simone paid Jerome the balance in cash and he gave her a receipt for her records. You've got a real nice place here, Jerome said on the last day. I'd be proud to live in it. Thank you, Simone said. For everything. After everyone left, she walked through the cottage slowly. The bedroom with its new windows and soft blue walls. The bathroom that didn't make her want to cry. The kitchen where she could actually cook. The main room with the fireplace that Jerome had cleaned and certified as safe to use. She sat on her new couch and looked around. 3 months ago, she'd been sleeping on an air mattress in a house that was falling apart. Now she had a home. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Heard you fixed up that dump. Still just a cottage though. Not like a real house. Patricia. Of course. Even now she couldn't help herself. Simone deleted the text and smiled. Let Patricia think this was as good as it got. Let her think the cottage was all Simone could manage. Let her keep underestimating her. Because this was just the beginning. Simone enrolled in online business courses using part of her fortune. She'd always been good with numbers, organized, detail-oriented. Graham used to say she was wasting her talents at the library. Now she was going to prove him right in a way he never expected. She took courses in business management, marketing, e-commerce, accounting. She studied at night after work, sitting at her small dining table with her laptop, taking notes by hand because she remembered things better that way. She researched markets and trends. She looked for gaps, for needs that weren't being met. And she found one. There was a huge demand for African American art and handmade goods, but most of the platforms selling them were big, impersonal companies that didn't highlight the individual artists. She could do better. She could create a space where artists got fair prices and recognition, where customers got quality products and knew exactly who made them, where Black artists and craftspeople got the platform they deserved. She spent 2 months building her business plan. She used $15,000 of her money to create inventory. She contacted artists directly, offering fair prices for their work. Paintings, sculptures, handmade jewelry, quilts, pottery, everything beautiful and made with care. She hired a web designer to build her site. She learned about SEO and social media marketing. She created accounts on every platform and started posting, slowly building an audience. Her store, Heritage Hands, launched on a Monday morning in October. She'd been working on it for 4 months. She had inventory from 40 different artists. Beautiful photography. Descriptions that told the story behind each piece. The first week she made 3 sales. $700 in profit. The second week she made 8 sales. $2,000. By the end of the first month, she'd made $15,000 in sales. After paying the artists their share and covering her costs, she walked away with $5,000 in profit. It wasn't enough to live on yet, but it was a start. She kept her library job for the regular paycheck and the normalcy. She didn't want anyone getting suspicious about sudden wealth. But every evening and weekend, she worked on Heritage Hands. She added more artists. She improved her marketing. She wrote blog posts about African American art and culture. She partnered with influencers who believed in her mission. By month 3, she was making $25,000 in monthly sales. By month 6, she was making $30,000. She hired a part-time assistant to help with customer service. She rented a small storage unit for inventory. And she stayed quiet about it. No posts on her personal social media. No bragging. Just steady, quiet work. Tanya was the only one who knew the full extent of her success. Girl, you're making more than I do at my corporate job, Tanya said one evening. When are you going to quit the library? Not yet, Simone said. I want to be sure the business is stable. And I don't want anyone asking questions. She ran into Patricia one Saturday at the grocery store. Simone's cart was full of healthy food, fresh vegetables, good cuts of meat, real juice instead of the cheap concentrate. Patricia's cart was mostly store brands and sale items. Simone, Patricia said, forcing a smile. You look well. Simone did look well. She'd started taking care of herself again. Regular haircuts. Nice clothes from consignment stores. A gym membership she actually used. She'd lost the weight she'd gained from stress and grief. She glowed with health and confidence. Thank you, Simone said. I'm doing really well actually. How are you? Oh, we're managing, Patricia said tightly. The mansion sold, but not for as much as we'd hoped. The market is tough right now. And Howard's investments haven't performed as expected. But we're getting by. I'm sorry to hear that, Simone said, and she meant it. Not because she cared about the Hastings, but because she was a better person than they'd ever been. Are you still working at the library? Patricia asked, eyeing Simone's cart. Part-time. I also have a small online business. Selling art and crafts. It's doing okay. Oh, how nice. Patricia said in a tone that suggested it wasn't nice at all. Playing at being a businesswoman. Well, I suppose everyone needs a hobby. It's more than a hobby, Simone said pleasantly. But I appreciate your concern. Give my best to Howard. She walked away before Patricia could say anything else. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. That night, she checked her business account. $32,000 in sales that month. After all expenses, she'd netted nearly $15,000 in profit. She looked around her cottage. At the comfortable furniture and clean spaces. At the laptop where she ran her thriving business. At the life she'd built from nothing with money nobody knew she had. She thought about Ruth Cooper, the woman who'd hidden her fortune under the floorboards. Ruth had lived simply, saved quietly, and left her wealth to someone who needed it. Someone who would use it wisely. Thank you, Simone whispered to the empty room. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Her phone rang. It was an artist from Atlanta who'd heard about Heritage Hands and wanted to partner with her. They talked for an hour about possibilities, about growth, about building something bigger. After the call, Simone opened her laptop and updated her business plan. She was ready for the next phase. Ready to grow. Ready to show everyone, not through words but through actions, that she didn't just survive. She thrived. 1 year after Graham's death, Simone woke up in her cottage and checked her business account. The balance showed $197,000 in sales for the year. After paying artists, expenses, and taxes, she'd netted $86,000 in profit. Combined with the returns from her investments, Mrs. Chin had been an excellent financial advisor. Simone's net worth had grown by over $150,000 in just 1 year. She lay in her comfortable bed, in her beautiful cottage, and smiled at the ceiling. She'd done it. Not just survived, but thrived. She quit her library job that morning. She gave them 2 weeks' notice and told them she was going to focus on her business full-time. Her manager was sad to see her go but happy for her success. You always seemed like you were meant for something more, her manager said. Simone expanded Heritage Hands. She hired 2 full-time assistants. She rented a proper warehouse space. She started attending art shows and craft fairs, recruiting new artists and building relationships. She launched a second site focusing on African textiles and clothing. Her business exploded. By month 15, she was making $50,000 a month in sales. Her social media following had grown to over 100,000 people. She'd been featured in 3 blogs and 1 magazine article about Black-owned businesses making a difference. And she still lived in her cottage, still drove Graham's old car, still shopped at the same grocery stores. But she dressed better now. She carried herself differently. She looked like a woman who knew her worth. The community event was being held at the old community center downtown. Simone went because one of her artists was displaying work there. She wore a simple dress and heels, her hair done in natural curls that framed her face. She was examining a sculpture when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Simone? Is that you? She turned. Patricia and Howard stood there, looking older and more tired than she remembered. Patricia's designer clothes were a year out of date. Howard's suit was wrinkled. Hello, Patricia. Howard. Simone smiled politely. How are you both? We're well, Patricia said, though her eyes said otherwise. You look different. Thank you. I'm doing really well. Still playing at your little online store? Patricia asked, and Simone heard the desperation under the condescension. Heritage Hands is doing excellent, actually. I had to hire staff and rent a warehouse. We're expanding into textile imports next month. Patricia's smile froze. How nice. We're doing well too. Howard just started a consulting position. It was a lie. Simone knew it was a lie. She'd heard through Tanya, who'd heard through her husband, who'd heard through Jerome, that Howard had been laid off 6 months ago and was struggling to find work. That's wonderful, Simone said, because she was kind even when she didn't have to be. They talked for a few more minutes, Patricia asking careful questions about the business, clearly trying to figure out exactly how successful Simone was. Simone gave vague but positive answers. Yes, the business was profitable. Yes, she was comfortable. Yes, she was very happy. Then she saw Bethany across the room. The young woman looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. She was pushing a stroller and trying to manage a squirming toddler at the same time. Her clothes were rumpled and stained. Her hair needed washing. Bethany looked up and their eyes met. For a moment, Simone saw fear there. Fear that Simone would say something, do something, make a scene. Simone just nodded politely and looked away. Is that Bethany? Patricia asked, following her gaze. We should say hello. She's been having such a hard time. I'm sure you should, Simone said. If you'll excuse me, I need to speak with someone about business. She walked away head high and she felt Patricia's eyes on her back. She could imagine what her former mother-in-law was thinking. Simone was successful, confident, thriving. Everything Patricia had assumed she wouldn't be. At the coffee shop afterward, Tanya was waiting with lattes. I saw you talking to the dragon lady, Tanya said. How did it go? She looked like she'd swallowed something bitter, Simone said. They're struggling. I could see it. Howard's out of work. They're living off savings. Bethany looks like she hasn't slept in a year. And how do you feel about that? Simone thought about it. I don't feel anything. Not happy, not sad. I just feel free. They don't matter to me anymore. What they think doesn't matter. What they say doesn't matter. They can't hurt me because I'm not the same person they tried to break. You've come so far, Tanya said softly. I'm so proud of you. That night, Patricia called. Simone almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of her. Simone dear, Patricia said, her voice syrupy sweet. It was so lovely seeing you today. You look absolutely wonderful. Thank you. I was thinking we should catch up properly. Have coffee. Talk about old times. Old times. When Patricia had sat in a lawyer's office and smiled as Simone lost everything. When she'd made cruel comments while Simone packed up her life. When she'd driven by the cottage to gloat. I'm pretty busy with the business, Simone said. But thank you for the offer. Oh well, if you change your mind. And Simone, if you ever need advice. Business advice, I mean. Howard used to run his own company, you know. He'd be happy to help. There it was. The real reason for the call. They needed money and they thought Simone might have some. That's kind of you, Simone said. But I have advisors I'm very happy with. I appreciate the thought though. After she hung up, she blocked Patricia's number. She didn't need that energy in her life. She opened her laptop and checked her orders for the day. 37 sales. Over $6,000. Tomorrow she had a video call with a supplier in Ghana about exclusive textile patterns. Next week she was flying to New York to meet with 3 galleries interested in representing her artists. She was building an empire, one sale at a time. And the best part? The people who'd tried to destroy her were watching from the outside, finally understanding what they'd lost when they underestimated her. She wasn't the broken woman they'd left with nothing. She was Simone Carter, entrepreneur, businesswoman, success story. And she'd done it all without them. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Simone didn't recognize the number but answered anyway. Simone? It's Howard. Howard Hastings. She'd blocked Patricia's number but not Howard's. An oversight she regretted now. Hello, Howard. What can I do for you? I was hoping we could talk. In person. It's important. Against her better judgment, Simone agreed to meet him for coffee. She arrived to find both Howard and Patricia waiting. Patricia looked older than she had at the community event 2 months ago. Her hair was more gray than brown now. Her clothes were definitely not designer. Thank you for meeting us, Howard said as Simone sat down. We know things have been difficult between us. You mean since you took everything from me and left me with a rundown cottage? Simone asked pleasantly. Yes, things have been difficult. Patricia flinched. We're sorry about that. Graham's death was hard on all of us. We weren't thinking clearly. This was a lie, but Simone let it pass. What did you want to talk about? She asked. Howard and Patricia exchanged glances. Finally, Howard spoke. We're in trouble. Financial trouble. Howard's consulting work dried up. We had to sell the mansion for less than we expected. And some investments went very wrong. We're looking at bankruptcy if things don't turn around. I'm sorry to hear that, Simone said. And she was in a distant way. She didn't wish harm on anyone. But she also wasn't going to pretend this was her problem. We were hoping, Patricia said carefully, that you might be able to help. Alone. Just temporary until we get back on our feet. Your business seems to be doing so well. There it was. They wanted money. How much? Simone asked. 50,000, Howard said. We'd pay you back with interest. Simone sipped her coffee and studied them. They looked desperate. Patricia's hands shook slightly as she held her cup. Howard couldn't meet her eyes. No, Simone said finally. No. Patricia's voice rose. Just like that? No. Just like that. You made it very clear a year ago that I wasn't family. That I didn't deserve Graham's money or his house or anything that belonged to him. You smiled while I lost everything. Patricia, you drove by my cottage to look at how far I'd fallen. So no, I'm not loaning you money. But we're family, Patricia said weakly. No, you're not. You stopped being my family the day you sat in that lawyer's office and smirked while I found out my husband had been cheating on me and left me nothing but a broken-down cottage. That cottage is worth something now, Howard said. You fixed it up. You must have money. I do have money, Simone said. I have a successful business. I have investments. I have security. And I earned every bit of it myself without any help from Graham or his family. She stood up. I hope things get better for you. I really do. But I'm not your solution. You'll have to figure this out on your own, just like I had to. Wait, Patricia said, and now there were tears in her eyes. Real ones for the first time Simone could remember. Please. We have nowhere else to turn. Everyone we know has already said no. We'll lose everything. Then you'll understand how I felt, Simone said gently. When I was left with nothing and no one cared. When people laughed at my misfortune. When I had to rebuild my entire life from scratch. It's hard. But it's possible. I'm proof of that. She left them sitting there and walked out into the sunshine. Her phone rang before she'd even reached her car. Patricia calling from a different number. Simone sent it to voicemail. That evening she had dinner with Tanya at a nice restaurant downtown. Not the fanciest place in town, but a step up from where they used to eat. They asked you for money? Tanya said, her eyes wide. After everything? $50,000. Like it was nothing. What did you say? I said no. I said no and I walked away and I feel fine about it. I would have thrown my coffee at them. Simone laughed. I thought about it, but I didn't need to. They already know they lost. They can see it every time they look at me. I don't need to be cruel. I just need to be successful. A week later, she learned through the local gossip network that the Hastings had declared bankruptcy. They'd moved to a small apartment on the other side of town. Patricia had gotten a job at a department store. Howard was driving for a rideshare company. Simone felt a brief moment of sympathy. Then she remembered Patricia's smile in the lawyer's office. Howard's disinterest as she packed up her life. The way they'd both treated her like garbage they were disposing of. They'd made their choices. Now they were living with the consequences. Bethany was another story. Simone saw her one day at the park pushing her daughter on a swing. The little girl laughed and called for her mother to push higher. Bethany looked tired but was smiling. Simone kept walking. She had no interest in Bethany's life. No interest in her struggles or her happiness. The woman who'd slept with her husband and helped destroy her marriage was just a stranger now. Someone who'd made bad choices and was living with them. That night, Simone sat in her cottage, her beautiful, comfortable cottage, and did her accounting. Heritage Hands had made $63,000 that month. Her second store had made $22,000. After expenses and artist payments, she'd netted almost $30,000. In 1 month, she had over $300,000 in her business accounts. Another million and change in investments. She owned her cottage outright. She had a new car on order. Nothing flashy, just a reliable sedan to replace Graham's aging vehicle. She was 23 months past Graham's death and doing better than she'd ever done in her life. She thought about calling Patricia back. Telling her exactly how much money she had. Rubbing her success in her former mother-in-law's face. But she didn't. Because that wasn't who she was. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't petty. She was just someone who'd been given a second chance and had made the most of it. Ruth Cooper's letter was framed on her wall now. Live well. That's the best revenge there is. Simone was living well. And that was revenge enough. 2 years after Graham's death, Simone stood in her cottage and looked around at everything she'd built. The space was unrecognizable from the broken-down shack she'd inherited. Wood floors gleamed. Walls painted in soft colors reflected the natural light pouring through new windows. The kitchen where she'd once used a hot plate now had high-end appliances. Art from her own business decorated every wall. But more than the cottage had changed. She had changed. Heritage Hands was bringing in 6 figures annually. Her second store was nearly as successful. She'd expanded into a third venture, a subscription box featuring African-American artists and craftspeople. She employed 8 people now, all of them making good wages with benefits. She'd bought a vacation condo in Charleston. Nothing huge, just a little place by the water where she could escape and think and plan. She traveled to 7 countries on buying trips. She had a financial advisor, an accountant, and a business manager. She had investments that would keep her comfortable for life even if the businesses failed tomorrow. But more than the money, she had peace. She woke up excited about her day. She went to sleep satisfied with what she'd accomplished. She looked in the mirror and liked the woman looking back at her. She was dating someone now, a professor of African American studies at the local university named Joseph. He was kind and funny and treated her like she mattered. They took things slow. Neither of them was in a rush. She'd learned that being alone was better than being with the wrong person. Tanya and she had taken a trip to Ghana the month before. They'd visited the markets where Simone sourced textiles. They'd toured historical sites and met with local artists. They'd eaten amazing food and laughed until their sides hurt. It was the best vacation Simone had ever taken. On a Saturday afternoon, Simone drove through town running errands. She passed the mansion that used to be hers. A young family lived there now. She could see a swing set in the yard and toys on the porch. The house looked happy. Was good. She drove past the apartment complex where she knew the Hastings lived now. She didn't slow down. Didn't stare. Their chapter of her life was closed. At the grocery store, she filled her cart without looking at prices. Fresh vegetables. Good meat. Real juice. Expensive cheese. She could afford it now. She could afford whatever she wanted. At the checkout, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Simone. She turned. Bethany stood there with her daughter in the cart. The little girl was maybe 2 now, with Graham's eyes and Bethany's blonde hair. She looked healthy and happy. Bethany looked better than she had at the community event. Still tired, but not as desperately so. Her clothes were clean if not fancy. Her hair was washed and pulled back in a ponytail. Hi, Simone said neutrally. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. For Graham. For the affair. For what his parents did to you. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I wanted you to know. Simone studied her for a moment. Bethany looked sincere. She also looked like someone who'd learned that homewrecking didn't lead to happily ever after. Thank you for saying that, Simone said. I hope you're doing okay. I'm managing. It's hard being a single mom. Graham's life insurance helped, but it ran out faster than I thought it would. His parents can't help much anymore. But we're okay. My daughter is healthy and happy, and that's what matters. That's good, Simone said and meant it. The little girl had done nothing wrong. She deserved a good life. I saw an article about your business, Bethany said quietly. In a magazine at the doctor's office. You're really successful now. I'm glad. I'm glad things worked out for you. Thank you. They stood there for a moment in awkward silence. Then Bethany's daughter started fussing, and Bethany moved toward the checkout. Take care, Simone, she said. You too. Simone watched them go and felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No pain. Just indifference. Bethany was a person who'd made mistakes and was living with them. That was all. She loaded her groceries into her car, her new car, a sleek sedan that was reliable and comfortable, and drove home to her cottage. Joseph was coming over for dinner. She was making jerk chicken and rice and peas, trying out a recipe from her trip to Ghana. They were going to watch a movie and talk about his research and her business plans and maybe kiss a little on the couch. She pulled into her driveway and sat for a moment looking at her home. The stone cottage with its new roof and fresh paint. The small porch with comfortable chairs. The garden she'd planted that was blooming with flowers. The life she'd built from nothing. She thought about Ruth Cooper, the woman whose hidden fortune had made all this possible. Ruth who'd lived simply and saved quietly and left her money to someone who needed it. I hope you can see this, Simone whispered. I hope you know I didn't waste your gift. I built something. I became someone. I lived well. She got out of the car and carried her groceries inside. Through the window she could see the cottage's interior, warm and welcoming and completely hers. No ghosts of Graham here. No memories of betrayal. Just new beginnings and endless possibilities. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tanya. Reminder. We're looking at that commercial space downtown tomorrow for your new store. Are you excited? Simone smiled and texted back. So excited. This is really happening. A year ago she'd been surviving. Now she was thriving. Planning a retail location. Growing her empire. Dating a good man. Traveling. Living. She heard a car and looked out to see Patricia's old sedan driving slowly past. Patricia in the driver's seat, staring at the cottage like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. The beautiful home. The new car. The woman who was supposed to be broken but was instead blooming. Simone waved cheerfully. Patricia's car sped up and disappeared around the corner. Simone laughed and went back to preparing dinner. She didn't need Patricia to acknowledge her success. She didn't need the Hastings to admit they'd been wrong about her. She didn't need Bethany to understand how much damage she'd caused. She just needed to keep living her best life. Keep building her business. Keep growing as a person. Keep being happy. The doorbell rang. Joseph, right on time with a bottle of wine and that smile that made her stomach do little flips. Hey beautiful, he said, kissing her cheek. Something smells amazing. Just trying a new recipe. Come in, tell me about your day. They cooked together, laughing and talking. They ate dinner on the little deck out back as the sun set. They washed dishes side by side. They settled on the couch with wine and a movie that neither of them paid much attention to. You seem happy, Joseph said, pulling her closer. Like really happy. I am, Simone said. I really am. And she was. 2 years ago, she'd sat in a lawyer's office and watched her life fall apart. She'd been left with nothing but a broken cottage and a broken heart. But the cottage had held a fortune. And she'd used that fortune wisely. Not just the money but the opportunity. The second chance. The possibility of becoming someone new. She'd built a business. Built a home. Built a life. Without her husband's family. Without his money. Without his legacy. She'd done it all on her own, with money from a woman who'd believed in second chances. Ruth Cooper's revenge had been living well. And now it was Simone's revenge too. She looked around her cottage, her beautiful, peaceful home, and smiled. The people who'd tried to break her were struggling now. But she wasn't glad about their struggles. She just didn't care. They'd lost their power over her the moment she'd stopped needing them. Her in-laws had gotten the mansion. They'd thought they'd won. But they hadn't known about the cottage. Hadn't known about the fortune under the floorboards. Hadn't known that the property they'd dismissed as worthless would give Simone everything she needed to build an empire. They'd underestimated her. And that had been their biggest mistake. Simone Carter had won. Not by destroying them, but by building something beautiful out of the ashes of her old life. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.